Hi everyone, it's Bells. Welcome back to my channel. We're doing a mid-year freakout tag today, plus a little wrap-up since nobody knows what I've been reading for the last 6 months. The freakout tag was created, the internet tells me, by two booktubers in 2012, Chami and Earl Grey Books, and is now a staple for all book bloggers and booktubers alike. Also, apologies for typing in the background. My partner is working and it's a small apartment. Last year I did something similar where I did like questions and a wrap-up. This time I'm doing pretty much the freakout tag questions, and then at the end I'm just gonna do a quick like good, bad, and ugly, or good, bad, what did I say? Good, bad, and ambivalent. Just like a quick wrap up of notable things I hadn't already mentioned throughout. The first question is, what is the best book you've read? Oh no, that's a lie. Wait. Oh god, hold that thought. I want to go through my stats first because I haven't even done that yet. I literally don't even know how many books I've read. So 2023 so far, I have read 60 books, which is a lot. My top moods are, as usual, dark, mysterious, and emotional. So surprisingly, classics is actually the highest on my genre scale. I'm gonna put a better picture up. Followed by fantasy and horror, which makes sense because I've been reading a lot of books for classics. There's a pun in there somewhere. But of course, fantasy and horror are my go-tos for myself. And I started tagging all of the books I read for university, and I think I read exactly 30 books for school. And then my average rating is a 3.88, which I think is really typical to what it normally is for these videos whenever I check stats. Now we can get into the best book I've read so far this year. I feel like I've read some really solid, like, life-changing books this year. I actually think the one I'm gonna pick is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. It's like an academic searching for Dracula kind of vibe. It's a big, like, chunky book. It's super slow. It's a very, like, subtle, quiet writing style. And, like, I still think about it. Would I really want to kill Dracula? Was the question I had at the end of that book. And I still don't really have an answer. A couple of other really notable mentions are Book of the Most Precious Substance by Sarah Graham. That was just like such a wild ride. It was so weird and vaguely sexy and so like heart-wrenching. I read it on a plane and just like binged the whole thing. It does exactly what I want Gothics to do, which is make you yourself, the reader, feel like you would also do these horrible things in this situation, but you don't know that you would be that person to do that horrible thing until the end of the book. Other Gothics that I've loved in the past are similar in that regard. Like It Will Just Be Us by Joe Kaplan did a similar thing for me last year and was my favorite horror of last year. Another notable one, Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. I just finished this one. I liked it so much that I tabbed it. I'm an English major. I do not do this unless I want to remember a bunch of stuff in this book. This was so pretty. It was just like the prettiest book I've ever read in my life. I feel like it ate a part of my soul. I devoured this, but I actually didn't. It took me like 6 weeks to read. I like savored this as long as I possibly could, and it was so worth it. The second question is, I added this one, is the best book I've read so far for class this year. The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, of course, is a classic. It was what got me into Gothics a few years ago when I read it for a class. This was a reread. It's not very long, and I think it's just phenomenal. So if you haven't read it, you should. I also reread Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe for class this year. You can see all of the obnoxious tabbing there. This thing is a beast, but man, do I love this book. I also read Zammy, A New Spelling of My Name by Audre Lorde for my queer writing class. This is just fantastic. Her prose is gorgeous. It's very sensual. Very evocative. And then finally, of course, I read Stone Butch Blues by Leslie Feinberg at the very beginning of this year, which is a hard book to beat. That was my favorite book of the year for a while. I think that was also just like fantastic. And I actually have me reading that in a vlog in like one of the only videos I posted this year. So I'll put that up here if you want to go and watch it. Best sequel so far, hands down, Ship of Destiny by Robin Hobb. Y'all know I am a Robin Hobb fangirl. I really fell in love with those characters, and the third book just did everything I wanted it to in ways that I didn't expect. Newest release I haven't read yet but want to. So I have a couple listed here, like Bad Cree by Jessica Johns, The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by S.A. Chakraborty, but I kind of also want this to be like newest release that I bought and I have on my shelf and I like should be reading because I purchased them, and you are all gonna laugh at me. I have 3 books by R.F. Kuang. I have not read any of them. I don't know if I like their writing, and yet I have 3 of their books. So I would really like to read these. Yellowface is obviously the one that just came out, but like, why haven't I read Babel? Who am I? And The Poppy War. I should be binging this. Where have I been? I don't know. Not reading The Poppy War. So those are probably on the top of my list for books I should be reading. A book that I would reread, again, Live Ship Traders trilogy. I imagine I'll be rereading her entire Realm of the Elderlings trilogy for the rest of my life, and The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. It's one of those books that I feel like every time you read it, you pick up something new. My most anticipated release for the second half of 2023. I have 3 that I'm really excited for. Silver Nitrate by Sylvia Moreno Garcia is coming out on July 18th, which is like a week from today. I'm so excited. I believe it's about werewolves. It's another like true horror book from her finally. Also, The Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse is coming out on August 1st. This will be the 3rd book in her Black Sun trilogy. And then we have Black River Orchard by Chuck Wendig coming out on September 5th. This is gonna be fun. I really like chunky books, you guys know that, and I really like chunky horror books. Ones that I think I've really enjoyed in the past are Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky, which I have, Plain Bad Heroines by Emily Danforth. Black River Orchard it feels like some kind of Adam and Eve retelling about a small town. I'll just read it for you. I don't remember. I think it's about a small town. Apples are involved. A small town is transformed by dark magic when 7 strange trees begin bearing magical apples in this new masterpiece of horror. Oh yeah. So I got excited about this because I wanted to read this for Summerween. Because I was like, oh my god, it's in the fall, it's an orchard, it's perfect, like I know I'm gonna like it because it's Chuck Wendig. I read the Book of Accidents last year and just loved it. Take a bite of one of these apples and you will desire only to devour another and another. You will become stronger, more vital, more yourself, you will believe. But then your appetite for the apples and their peculiar gifts will keep growing and become darker. Reminds me a little bit of Needful Things, actually, by Stephen King. But I feel like Chuck Wendig will do this in a more interesting way. No hate to Stephen King. I liked Needful Things, although the ending was genuinely awful. I really appreciated how in Book of Accidents, it felt really current, like it felt like a piece that cemented in that time that he wrote it. I would like to see that feeling again. My biggest disappointment of the year, Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I feel like I should have liked that book, and I just did not. It was well structured, it was well written, the horror was cool, the body horror was really fascinating, it's mermaid adjacent, but I just did not like it at all. I didn't feel satisfied. That was a disappointment. So was Stoneblind by Natalie Haynes. It was a Medusa retelling, feminist Medusa retelling, and this one just felt kind of unnuanced. It felt uninteresting. It was a little bit boring, and if I hadn't been on a plane with no other book to read while I was reading it, I probably would have DNF'd it. The ending did save it from being like just like a flat 2 stars. I thought the ending was really cool, and something that the author did that I really appreciated. She personified Medusa's head as a separate character from Medusa herself, and I really liked that, but the story itself just kind of lacked nuance at the end of the day. That's the word I'm gonna use. Biggest surprise, I'm gonna sound like an absolute nerd, but Beowulf was actually a huge surprise. I did not expect to like it. I didn't grab it, but let me go grab it. This particular edition by Maria Headley, it's coming from a little bit more of a feminist place. Now, I'd never read Beowulf. I'm not a poetry person. I just expected to absolutely hate it. But because of this particular edition that really centers on the women in the story, it wound up being my favorite book I read for that class. I still kind of think about it, and I liked her writing so much that I added a couple of her other novels that she's written to my list to hopefully read, which I'll put up here. My other biggest surprise, this is like the absolute opposite end of the spectrum, but Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. You know what? That book was great. Is her world building that great? No. Are her sex scenes that interesting? Not really. But are they fun to read? Yes. And this 3rd book was fun for me in a way that the first 2 were not. Half of the book is made up of a fantasy battle, and I thought the battle was just like really well constructed. The politics were interesting. I cried. So that was a really big surprise. I also read Silver Flames, Court of Silver Flames. I think that's the fourth one with Nesta. And you know what? I really like that one too. Although, again, the sex scenes in Silver Flames were like a lot, but also really boring at the same time. I don't know how to describe that. Very hetero. Too hetero for me. But that's okay. New favorite author, T. Kingfisher. 10,000%. I read Nettle and Bone on a plane. I was on quite a few planes in the last couple of months. Oh my god. It was so good. It was funny. It was dark. It was sad. It was so fairy tale. It was so magical. This is about a princess, but it's not about the princess marrying the prince. It's about the princess killing the prince. It was a 5-star book for me. I'm such a sucker for fairy tales, and I really liked T. Kingfisher's writing in that. I also read The Twisted Ones, and that was also super fun. It was a folk horror. I was like squirming. It made my skin crawl, but it didn't scare me so much that I couldn't sleep, but it scared me enough that I was like scared in the moment reading it, and that's like the perfect level for horror. And then I've heard that The Hollow Places is like The Twisted Ones but better, so I'm really excited for that. Newest fictional crush or new favorite character. Look, I talk about the live ship traders, I talk about Robin Hobb a lot here, but Malta is the most surprising favorite character I have had in a long time, because I hated her. She made me not want to read the first book. She's just this selfish, like 12-year-old little girl. But her character arc is so solid, and she grows to become this like incredibly mature, helpful, sassy, forward woman. The ending of her story and like how she comes to play a part in the big final scheme in the third book was what like really pushed that to a 5 stars for me. I really liked all of those characters, but going from enemies to lovers experience with me and Malta was something I didn't expect, and I really, it just blew me away. Robin Hobb's character work will forever blow me away. Book that made me cry, Ship of Destiny made me cry. You know what made me fucking cry? This goddamn book. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Gabrielle. Excuse me. I was sobbing. Like full, like eyes are blurry and I'm still trying to read the page. This was also a 5-star book for me. I can see why it won the Goodreads Choice Award last year. I also cried a lot in Last Tale of the Flower Bride. Book that made me laugh or happy. You know, usually this one is the hardest one for me because I read such twisty books most of the time, but I have read some really fun reads this year. Nettle and Bone made me laugh. Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. I was giggling through the whole thing. Everyone You Hate Is Going to Die by Daniel Sloss. I listened to that as an audiobook and was like laughing in the middle of the street. So Happy for You by Celia Lasky is a satire on weddings. That one made me giggle. That one is not for everyone, but I did really enjoy it. And then I also read this fun one, Tune In Tomorrow by Randy Dawn. This is the silliest book you'll ever read. It's about this actress, this like failing actress in Los Angeles who gets a job working on a reality show in the fairy world. It was silly. It was a romp. It was a good time. Most beautiful book I bought this year. I feel like this one's gonna come up for a lot of people, but A Day of Fallen Night, I mean, shut the fuck up. But you know what's actually my favorite cover? This one. Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. I can speak. This book just does everything for me. The red and the yellow and the blue, like the bright colors, the hand with the demon claws. It does so much for me. There's books I want to read by the end of the year. I think the question is actually books that I need to read by the end of the year. I don't need to read anything except what I need to read for class. I really would like to read this, Our Share of Night, just because I'm pretty sure I'm gonna love it. Again, any of the R.F. Kuang books, would really like to read those. Tress of the Emerald Sea, I bought the Fancy Pants edition, and I really feel like I should read this in the year that it comes out. We're about to get the third one, and I still haven't read the first one, so that would be good. And of course, I really would like to start, like, just continue with the Robin Hobb Alderlings series. Book I want the most people to read are Stonebutch Blues by Leslie Feinberg in every capacity. The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Again, it's super short. It's really good. If you like my channel and you like the books I read, you're gonna like it. I promise. I shouldn't promise things, but I promise you'll like it. Let's do the quick wrap up. I have it set up as good, bad, and ambivalent, because I guess I'm dramatic. So we'll start with the ugly, the bad. The Family Game by Catherine Steadman. that was rough. That was just like a C-list interpretation of the movie Ready or Not, which is a fabulous horror movie, one of my favorites. It had this weird through line of the main character being like lustful over her husband's dad, and it didn't really go anywhere. I just did not vibe with the way that it was written. The Ancestor by Danielle Trussoni, I DNF'd that one. I don't even remember it, if I'm gonna be honest. And Not Your Average Hot Guy by Gwenda Bond. I also DNF'd that one. I think in my review I have something about how it feels like a Christian interpretation of If You Fell in Love with the Devil. The Ambivalent, Fake Accounts by Lauren Euler, I read. I forgot I read this, to be honest. I think it should have been a series of essays. The main character is kind of insufferable, but that's also kind of the point. I liked it, but I also didn't like it, and it had nothing to do with what it said that it did. The Lost Village by Camilla Sten. It was good. It was fine. Fairy Tale by Stephen King. This just made me want to read better fantasy. It was a 3-star flat for me. It didn't really feel like a fairy tale. It didn't really homage fairy tales to me that much. Not enough in the way that I wanted it. It felt like it homaged Lovecraft a lot more, but I just didn't really care about that book at the end of the day. And then the good, the great, other fantastic books. Paris the Memoir was astounding. Severance by Ling Ma was really great, really quiet apocalypse story. The Drowning Kind by Jennifer McMahon. Haunted swimming pool, mermaid adjacent, 5-star read. The audiobook was fantastic, and it goes between 2 different time periods, and it's one of the few books that's done that where I really, really liked it. They had 2 different narrators for each time period. Super solid. When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole was this awesome thriller about gentrification of a Black neighborhood. Highly recommend that one. And then I also read Sadie on a Plate by Amanda Elliott, which is this like cute little rom-com about a girl in a cooking competition, and it just made me happy. It was just fun. I know that there's a lot of new people here. Thank you to Kayla at Books and Lala for her wonderful shout out. So if there's content that you are interested in, tell me, please. I'd like to make sure that you all are watching my videos and having a fun time. I hope you are reading beautiful things. I hope you're reading fun things. I hope you're reading dark and twisty things. I will see you very soon with my next video.